this is a serious book, and a lot of us people say, well, where everything comes from America, it's all America, or this brother lives here among us. And we need to begin to honour and give credence and credit to those among us, around us, who live among us, grounded in this community. I'm not going to really hold you any longer because we know we've got a lot to get through. It's going to be a journey of our greatness of when we ruled and giving lessons and teachings to how we can rule again. Brothers and sisters, let's give it up for our speaker tonight, Brother Robin Walker.
Okay, how long have I got?
About now.
Not a stupid question. Okay. Alright, the presentation is based on the book When We Ruled, and what it's designed to do is to get people into this notion of Black history. Right, let me see if I can improve the picture one bit, and then we'll get into it. Yeah? Okay, what's it doing there?
Is that alright?
Right, I think we got it. Okay, when we're dealing with African world history, we're dealing with the oldest history of any people on the planet Earth.
Right.
That monument there is called the Great Sphinx of Giza. Originally, scholars used to think it was 2,500 BC, 4,500 years old. We now know that it's actually 2,500 years older than that, meaning that goes back at least as far as 5,000 BC. Does it go back any further? There are some scholars who will even tell you 10,500 BC. Now, when we're getting with African history, we're getting with two places. We're getting with a place here called Tar Seti. Tar Seti, the land of Set, the deity of the south. We're also dealing with Egypt. We're dealing with civilizations that were born on the Nile River. And the most important stopping off points for the Nile River, there's Kustul. That's an important stopping off point. That was the old capital of the land of Set, Tar Seti. Now we're going to deal with Western Thebes and Karnak, important cultural centers in Egypt. Then we have the capital city of ancient Egypt, to give it the Greek version of the name, Memphis. And then moving even further north, Giza. That's where the energy is going to go. Right, so New York Times, March the 1st, 1979. On its front page and page 16, Nubian monarchy called oldest. Let's read it. Evidence of the oldest recognizable monarchy in human history, preceding the rise of the earliest Egyptian kings by several generations, has been discovered in artifacts from ancient Nubia in Africa. We then read on. The discovery is expected to stimulate a new appraisal of the origins of civilization in Africa, raising the question of to what extent later Egyptian culture may have derived its advanced political structure from the Nubians. We jump to here. Dr. Williams said the dating is based on correlations of artistic styles in the Nubian pottery with similar styles in pre-dynastic Egyptian pottery, which is relatively well dated. He said some of the Nubian artifacts bore disconnected symbols resembling those of Egyptian hieroglyphics that were not readable. They were on their way to literacy, Dr. Williams said. Now, what he's talking about here, they found on the Nubian artifacts, the Tar Seti artifacts, disconnected symbols resembling Egyptian hieroglyphics. But then there's an untruth mixed in. They've said the artifacts were not readable. No, he couldn't read them. And the reason why he couldn't read them is that they were written in ancient Nubian. He could read them had they been Egyptian, but because it's in Nubian, he's trying to read these words and they're coming out as gobbledygook. And that's only gobbledygook because he couldn't read it. That's not the same as saying that they couldn't be read, just not by him. We read on. A detailed monograph on the discoveries is in preparation, but there's no deadline and publication is expected to be a few years away. And guess what? They delivered. Reprinted from Archaeology Magazine, Volume 33, Number 5, copyright 1980. 1 year later, this article appeared, The Lost Pharaohs of Nubia, by Bruce Williams. Let's read it. A newly discovered ancient kingdom is always a matter of intense interest, but when it precedes the earliest known monarchy, the unification of Egypt in the 4th millennium BC, then history itself is reborn. The place is ancient Nubia at Kustul, where the investigations of archaeological materials recovered during the great 1960s rescue effort has recently unveiled a birthplace of pharaonic civilization several generations before the rise of the first historic Egyptian dynasty. Right, let's do some analysis of this. We've been told that history used to begin with the unification of Egypt. That's where the upper and lower lands of Egypt were brought together and unified. According to this article, that took place in the 4th millennium BC. That makes sense? And then obviously Nubia is before that. We're feeling this. However, 4th millennium BC, 3000 and something BC. That's based on their calculations. My calculations say it happened in the 6th millennium BC, which is 5000 and something BC. Or to be exact, first king of Egypt, 5660 BC, Pharaoh Name. Therefore, this took place 5900 BC. That makes sense? So there's the beginnings of African history. Recorded African history, 5900 BC. We get a line of 9 pharaohs of Nubia. And then when we get to the 10th pharaoh of Nubia, we get the rise of the first pharaoh of Egypt. 5660 BC to 5598 BC. He reigned for 62 years.
And his name was?
This particular person, okay, you can use what some people do. There's a tradition of writing African history using Greek names because the earliest documents are in Greek. Right. In which case he becomes Pharaoh Menes. African name Pharaoh Mena or Pharaoh Name. And the reason why we've got 2 names is that there's a Horus name and there's a Set name. These are 2 of the ancient deities of ancient Egypt. Does that make sense? So I prefer to use Pharaoh Mena, first king of the first dynasty of ancient Egypt. Now, in a fair world, this face should be the most recognized face in human history. Everyone should know who this person is. Now, what do we know about this face? The portrait statue was dug up in 1920 odd by Sir Flinders Petrie, Englishman. Sir Flinders Petrie brought the statue, this portrait statue, brought it to London, where it is now housed in the University College London, the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology, which is on Mallet Street. And when you go inside Mallet Street, you ask for the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology, ask for catalogue number UC15989. That's what they'll show you. Which means that they've known this stuff since the 20s. And therefore what they presented as Egyptology has essentially been a joke. And they've been laughing at us because they know they have this portrait. One more thing about this portrait, also ancestor of Mr. Michael Tyson.
Easy.
Everyone's thinking, who's Michael Tyson? Right, Pharaoh Binethris, Pharaoh of the 2nd Egyptian dynasty. Now people are thinking, Robin, what's a dynasty? A line of kings belonging to the same royal family. So Mena plus 8 members of his family, a time period of nearly 300 years. That's dynasty 1. Does that make sense? Right? This guy, Pharaoh Binethris, plus 11 members of his family, they ruled as Dynasty 2. And then the Dynasty 2 period is the beginnings of where the Egyptians start to build grand monuments. And the beginnings of the monument building is the last pharaoh of this guy's family. His name is Pharaoh Karsekemui. Then we move to Dynasty 3, where we have Pharaoh Zosa and 5 members of his family ruling as Dynasty 3. Then we have Pharaoh Khufu and 7 members of his family ruling as Dynasty 4. Then we have Pharaoh Sahura and 9 members of his family, Dynasty 5. And then we have Pharaoh Pepi and 6 members of his family, Dynasty 6. That takes us from Dynasty 1 to Dynasty 6. This is what scholars call the Old Kingdom period. Now, I've just done it, I've just talked about it in less than 5 minutes. We've actually traversed 1,472 years of black history. Does that make sense? Yes. A line of 55 glorious rulers. Now, during this period, you may say, what was going on in the rest of the world? We can be absolutely specific what was going on in the rest of the world.
Okay.
Jack, squat, diddly, nada, nisht, nil, qua. We can be absolutely specific. Now we need to get with this idea of, imagine a dynasty starting in the year 500 AD and still being in power now. That's the achievement that we're talking about, right? Now during this period, the pyramids go up. During this period, we get the building of the Sphinx. During this period, we're getting the development of the calendar that we have today, 365 and a quarter day calendar. During this period, we get the first hieroglyphic texts, the first religious texts inscribed in the pharaoh of Dynasty 5, Pharaoh Unas. They're called the pyramid texts. During this period, we have the world's first philosopher, Ptah Hotep. So in other words, during this period, this was the most amazing period in world history. Now, we could talk about details and so on, but I'm going to keep it real simple. Check him out. I'll just let that sink in. Right, so this is then the beginnings of black history. At this point, there are only 2 civilizations on Earth. Tarseti, the land of Set, and Kemet, the land of Egypt. Does that make sense? Yeah. There are no civilizations anywhere else. Right, the next great period begins with this guy, Pharaoh Mentuhotep II. Mentuhotep II is responsible for the second unification of Egypt that created what's called the Middle Kingdom. He's one of the pharaohs of the 11th dynasty, and what happens is he banishes his rivals, pulls together the 2 lands, and was then the next pharaoh to wear the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. Now the Middle Kingdom is really interesting, because it's during the Middle Kingdom that modern ideology, as we understand modern ideology today, was born. The idea that a government has a responsibility to look after its people, to feed its people, to clothe its people, to build, for example, we get buildings of apartments of 3,000 rooms, we get the draining of swamps, irrigation, all the things that a modern government does. They were dealing with it then. Now his time period, where we get the birth of the Middle Kingdom, is 3,448 BC. Right, after the Middle Kingdom, the next great period is called the New Kingdom period. And this New Kingdom period begins with this great woman. Anyone know who this is? Queen Ahmose Nefertari. And Ahmose Nefertari, now you can see that people need to be seeing the portrait. Yes, people need to be seeing this. People need to be feeling this. Now, her period begins in the year 1709 BC. Now, we're interested in what was the Middle Kingdom saying? What was the New Kingdom saying? This is what they were saying. Enjoy that. You enjoying that? Okay, now we're going to take a slightly different angle. And now what about that for a photograph? And it's actually one of my brethren that took that, Alan Mitchell. And I told him, get images where there's people in the photograph, so that way we know how big the monuments are. Okay, this is called the Temple of, wait for it, Amen in Karnak. Now, did I just say Amen? Right, so those of you who end your prayers forever and ever, Amen, you better know who you're praying to. Oh, war. Right then, the Temple of Amen in Karnak. This temple, with its 134 columns spread out over 56,000 square feet, largest enclosed space in Egyptian architecture. And essentially, modern architecture as we understand it today was born right there. Elsewhere in the same structure. We're looking up now, take the photograph. Now, can you see that gives us some idea of scale? Elsewhere in the same structure, this is called the Festival Hall of Thutmose III. Different pharaohs contributed their own bits to it. And again, the monuments are still standing. This is called the Chapel to the deity Osiris. Osiris, for those people that don't know, is a deity associated with the moon. And if you know anything about the moon, it dies at the end of a 28-day cycle and then is reborn after 3 days. Does that make sense? And so Osiris became associated with the deity of resurrection. And the idea that the god dies and then is resurrected 3 days later is like the moon disappearing and coming back 3 days later. And you can see how everyone's grabbed that idea and they've not stopped running. Now what we're going to do is, we're going to get a close-up of that image, and this is what we've got. You enjoying that? Now look at that for how exquisite the detail is. Now, why this is really, really interesting is that this was built something like 3,500 BC. This particular part was built by Pharaoh Senusret I. And as you can see, yeah, I'm feeling that. Right, now, here we have a line of sphinxes. And the sphinxes show Ares the ram. Ares the ram is sacred to the deity Amen. So we're starting off here, which is Karnak. We're going to follow the line of rams. And as we follow the line of rams, this is where we end up. It's a bit like we're starting off here, which is Karnak. We're following the road. We've got this double line of rams till we end up here. Now, essentially, we're moving 2 miles across the city of Karnak / Thebes. This city originally had a population of 1 million people. And then what you would have would be mansions along the edge of the city with 50 to 60 rooms. Yes? In other words, Cushites was living large. Now we're going to go to the other end of the complex, and here we are now. This is in Luxor. In other words, we've moved 2 miles away and we're still part of this temple complex. Now, why this is really, really interesting is that this is one of the largest examples of temple building built anywhere on earth by any group of people. Okay, now we're going to move into next gear, and we're going to deal with some more civilizations in Africa. We're going to deal with what W.E.B. Du Bois calls Ethiopia, 650 BC. Another name for that same civilization is what we would today call Kush. We're going to deal with Benin, which is basically the southern half of modern-day Nigeria. We're going to deal with Munumutapa, which exists from about 1000 to about 1800, this massive empire here. So this is where the action is going to go next. Okay, Kush. You can see also on the Nile River, we've got places like Aswan, Dhaka, Kurusku, Semna, Kerma, Dongala, Kawa. The first capital city was at a site called Napata. Another important city was Nuri. Another important city was Musarrat. Another important city was Meroe. And I'm going to show you some of the artifacts that are part of this civilization. In 1832, a guy called G.A. Hoskins traveled across Sudan. And when he got there, he saw these pyramids and he sketched them. And he published them in 1832. Now, you see that there's some people in the picture giving us some idea of scale. And what's really interesting about the Sudanese pyramids is that there are 223 pyramids in Sudan. Now, there's 19 in Egypt. Therefore, there are more than twice as many pyramids in Sudan as there are in Egypt. Now, this is the site Nuri, the first of the capitals of Kush. Now, ruling from Nuri, we get a very great king called Pharaoh Taharko. Some people pronounce it Taharka. Now, the same person's in the Bible where it's spelled Tirharka, same person. Now, this particular person reigned between the years 690 BC and 664 BC. He's actually the most powerful black ruler in history. Unlike all previous rulers who called themselves Pharaoh of the Two Lands or Pharaoh of Kush, he crowned himself the Emperor of the world. He crowned himself the Emperor of the world. Now that sounds a big boast. Now what's the substance behind this boast? Right, this is taken from Professor Yusuf Ben Yochanan. His book is called Africa, Mother of Western Civilization. Now the details are wrong, but the sentiment is spot on. And this is where you can tell that Dr. Ben Yochanan has done more reading than everybody else. You can tell. Now the empire of the Ethiopians wasn't this territory. Where the empire begins, it begins in Sudan, it includes Egypt, it went all the way to Carthage, all the way to Morocco, all the way to Spain. That makes sense? And then on this side, yes, it certainly went into Syria. So in other words, Pharaoh Taharko ruled 1/3 of Africa. Never been done before, yes? Not only that, he ruled as far as Spain, he ruled here, making it quite clear that when he crowns himself as Emperor of the world, you'd better believe it, because who else is stepping like that? Now, we then have to deal with Carthage, because the Kushites set that civilization up. Now, what's really interesting about Carthage, now can you see that looks a little bit like Rome? Only one problem, it's older. So let's correct the facts. Rome looks a little bit like that. Right, now Carthage was founded in the year 814 BC. And it was founded by people coming in from the Middle East, black people coming in from the Middle East. But when Taharka builds his empire, massive Kushite influence goes into there. So the deity Amen is worshipped there too. The deity Imhotep, who in this territory is called Eshmun. Right, same deity, Eshmun, Imhotep, the same person, was worshipped there. Massive numbers of Egyptian and Cushitic amulets and so on have been dug up on that site. Now Carthage, for us dealing with our history, this is the greatest city in the ancient world. All products, be they animal, mineral, vegetable, all products from all over the world pass through Carthage. Carthaginian shipping was on all known seas. That makes sense? So we need to get with the fact being that even as late as the Carthaginian people, black people were still living fat. Then there's the greatest Carthaginian of them all. You enjoying that? Right, now I did some special research on this, so let me share some of this. There's some controversy in white circles over whether or not this is genuinely Hannibal, right? Right, so if anyone challenges you on this, this is what you're supposed to say. The documents tell us one fact about Hannibal. He rode the sole surviving Indian elephant. So that's what we're looking for. What kind of elephant is this? It's an Indian elephant. African elephants have a different shaped back. An African elephant's back curves in. The ears are much, much bigger. There's an apron hanging underneath the legs. Does that make sense? That is an Indian elephant. Now, once we know by Polybius and Livy that my man rode the sole surviving Indian elephant, it's that. Yeah? And if that's one side of the coin, then who's this? There it is. Carthage now becomes another center of civilization, spreading culture. And it spreads culture to a civilization next door called Numidia. Now, Numidia, most people don't even know that civilization existed. Monument still standing. That's a sketch of a monument, but still there. Monument still standing. Now, we're going to return to Kush, because we need to get with some mundane artifacts like this, tweezers. Now, why am I showing you tweezers? You didn't come out here to hear about tweezers, now did you? Right, what material's that? Gold. Right, now have you got golden tweezers? Right, there it is. Now, the fact that you can have something as mundane as tweezers made out of gold, can you see, that's kicking. Yes. Right now, in the 1820s, a guy called Giuseppe Fellini discovered the pyramid of Queen Mother Amarni-Shekheto. That's what the pyramid looked like when he got there. That's what the pyramid looks like now. In other words, what happened? They destroyed it. Now, having destroyed it, which is incidentally a model for what we should be doing to their monuments in Rome, right, this is what they found. You ready for this? Are you sitting down? No, people have to tell me they're ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
Right, enjoy that. Right, this is called the Treasures of Queen Mother Amarni-Shekheto. Now, what you're looking at here is gold, gesso, and glass worked together. Right then, now, the Kushites, they came up with a new writing script, and the new writing script is called Meroitic. So just as we've got writing in ancient Tarseti, just as we've got writing in Egypt, just as we've got writing in Carthage, just as we've got writing in Numidia, you've now got a new writing script in Kush. Right then, just to show you some more monuments, this is still standing in Sudan, and it's at a site called Musarrat es-Sufra. And this is what Musarrat es-Sufra looked like when the Europeans first got there and visited it in 1832. Now that doesn't look very impressive, does it? Doesn't it look mashed up to you? Yeah. Right, they surveyed the site, and check this out. Ready? This is the plan that they drew. Now, why this is important here is, can you see that we've got a temple complex here, a temple complex here, a temple complex there, a temple complex here, and a whole series of ramps and connections and so on. Now, can you see that's on the same scale as Karnak? Except this is not Egypt now, this is Sudan. Showing same ideas, people living large, people living flat. Now, just to reinforce the point, A. Hakem, this is General History of Africa Volume 2, says, recent excavations at Meroe and Musarrat es-Sufra reveal temples with walls and statues covered with gold leaf. Could you imagine that? That means your walls are blinging. Not the people, the walls. Yes? Right then, this is another one of the Kushite structures. This is the palace of, another one of the queens. This is a queen's palace, and it's called the Palace of Wad Ben Naga. Now, let's look at the plan. How would you get into that room? Where's the doorway?
Underground.
Oh, no, there's no doorway. There's no doorway, so how do you get into that? Someone said underground. The other way of looking at it is overground. This is a multi-story building. And you can tell just from looking at the plans, how would you get into these rooms? The only way you can do is by stairs. That makes sense? So clearly then, this is a multi-story structure. The Palace of Wad Ben Naga. Right, then we have more pyramids. This is at a site called Jebel Barkal. And then here we see Kush's last great monument. And this is called the Kiosk. Now I'm going to show you one of the last dated artifacts from Kush, which brings the story to 300 AD. Now what's this? This is gold, gilt, and glass. And glass, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Right then, the action now is going to go to the Nigeria region. Now this is what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about Nok, we're going to talk about Yoruba, particularly this place here, Ile Ife, and the real place where the energy is going to go is Benin. Yes? So this is where the argument is going next.
Okay.
In the year 1928, there was tin mining operations taking place in Nigeria that was led by the British. These tin mining operations resulted in certain places being dug up. And as places were being dug up, artifacts were being found. And in subsequent diggings found out that there was a civilization whose very beginnings goes back to, wait for it, 4,290 BC. Yes? Now, by the time we get to the period 1000 BC, we're starting to see brilliant art coming out like this. Now, this bust, we need to examine it because there's some very, very important points here. You'll notice here that the eye is almost like triangular, yeah? The mouth here is almost like a cube turned round. You can see similar geometry. The shape of a person to actual shapes, geometric shapes. Now this is what would ordinarily be called modernism, because this is where the cubists got the idea from that you could reduce a human being's shape into geometrical shapes. But this is modernism 1000 BC. You understand? Yeah. Meaning that modernist thought, abstract thought, Africans were dealing with this 1000 BC. And then the Europeans caught up with Picasso and Modigliani 100 years ago. Oh, there it is. Now, subsequent diggings, and this was found. This is in Igbo land. There was a civilization that nobody even knew existed. And the civilization was called Igbo Ukwu. And then as people started digging, they found evidence of artifacts dated between 800 AD and 1000 AD. In other words, artifacts that are 1000 years old to 1200 years old. Now this is made of metal. It's copper plus tin plus lead. Now how was it made? It was made using a technique called the lost wax technique, which is where you manufacture in 6 stages. The first stage is where you take clay and you form it into an outline of this. That makes sense? First stage. Second stage, go over the clay with beeswax kept 3 millimeters thin to get all these details, including all these dots, all these repeated patterns, all this symmetry, that abstract animal. Third stage, take a second layer of clay and put it around the outside of everything that you've got. Take your, everything you've got, put it into a kiln, fire it, knowing that the melting point of beeswax is lower than the melting point of clay. The beeswax runs out, leaving a 3 millimeter gap. Your 5th stage is to take your copper, plus your tin, plus your lead. They all have different melting points. Melt them, pour them into the 3 millimeter gap, and then wait for everything to cool and harden. 6th stage, remove the outer clay, remove the inner clay, and then here we have it. Now, when I did this presentation or something like this for the University of Derby, one of the engineering students said, you know what, I've just been studying that. It's a technique used to make car parts. So remember where you heard it first. Now, you feeling that? Igbo artifact, 1,200 years old. And everything you're seeing, including the cage, including the reef knots, including the insect, including the symmetry, all of that is leaded bronze, copper plus tin plus lead. Now what happens is, by the time we get to 1100 AD, the Yorubas have got it going on. And they build a city-state called Ile-Ife, the first of 16 Yoruba city-states. Now what's interesting about Ile-Ife is that it's paved. I know people misheard what I said. Is that it's paved. You heard that?
Yeah.
And it was paved by a female ruler who is believed to be called Oni Olowo. Now, I think that's her. Yes? Now, what's interesting about Oni Olowo is that the pavements themselves were made from rolling corn cobs. Corn cobs, zea maize, only come from one place, the American continent. That makes sense? Are you feeling this? Since zea maize only comes from the American continent, and the pavements that she had, the city of Ile-Ife paved with, could only have come from the American continent. That means that contacts between her state of Ile-Ife and the Native Americans had been made approximately the year 1100 AD. Now, why this is interesting is Christopher Columbus, we have to say, bun that. Right then, now the masterpiece of the Yoruba artist is this. This is one of the 9 Shoedi bronzes, is what it's called, made between the year 1200 and 1400 AD, made of copper. Now, that looks like wood, doesn't it? No, it's copper. Yes? Every bit as good as anything the ancient Greeks ever came up with. Every bit as good as anything the ancient Romans ever came up with. That is absolutely exquisite. Now, the next part of the story concerns the city-states of Benin. This state was founded in 900 AD and was minor and obscure initially. But 900 AD is where it begins. And they begin with a dynasty of kings known as the Ogizo dynasty. Now that dynasty rules from 900 to 1170 AD. And then what happens is that the dynasty is then later overthrown, and then there's an interregnum period. They then send for a Yoruba ruler to start the next dynasty, which shows the link between Yoruba and Benin. Right, you enjoying that? Right, that's one piece of brass.
Wow.
Yeah, damn right, one piece of brass. Yes? Now, can you see why people rate this art as the best metal art in the world? You're enjoying that? Yeah, people need to know. Okay, now this shows pretty much how the city developed, right? Here we have the original layout, and then we've got the former Ogizo Palace. That's your first dynasty, 900 to 1170. And then you have the place where you've got the town chiefs and the palace chiefs. Then you've got your wards of drummers, blacksmiths, brass workers, wood, ivory carvers, yes? And then eventually the thing starts to expand. That makes sense? So this then represents where the action began, and then eventually the city starts to spread out. Now, by the time we get to 1170, we've now got a new dynasty founded by Prince Oranmiyan, who's Yoruba, who then brings a whole bunch of Yoruba culture to Benin, and then this civilization blows up, as we shall see. Right, now, this is a piece of Yoruba art, and again, it's metal. Let that just sink in right there. That is metal. Okay, now it represents a guy called Oni Obalufon II. And this particular guy is believed to be the father of Yoruba metal art. And then this technique is then brought to Benin and then enabled Benin to raise its game as a civilization. Now the civilization then thrives because of trade. That is supposed to represent a Hausa trader coming in from the north on horseback, bringing goods to Benin. And then eventually they would trade cloth, pepper, and many other goods. Does that make sense? And then we get links with Europe, where they start trading via the Portuguese. Now, let's take a look at this. Anyone know what this is? It's a salt cellar. Yes, it's a salt cellar. Or, as they say in the University of Oxford, a condiment bowl. No, they say pass the condiments, apparently. Right. Now, 3 pieces of ivory. That bit there is 1 piece. Second piece, third piece. Right then, this was made in the year 1500. Right? And you can compare this salt cellar with your salt cellar at home to find out how standards gone up or standards gone down. Right, now this is the group of people that you don't want to mess with. Right? Now you notice that they're wearing body armour. Yes? Now this whole thing about body armour and chainmail and so on, we thought that Europeans came up with that. That just shows how little we know. Right, now, there's this concept, I live in Walthamstow, and there's this person in Walthamstow who used to live here called William Morris. And he founded something called the Art and Crafts Movement. Yes? And they make a lot of noise about this. The idea that crafts have to be beautiful and practical, right? Now what you're looking at, that's, again, brass, yes? It's a chair. Now can you see there's a coiled snake? Yeah? And can you see there's frogs on the base? That's Benin art and craft. Now, unfortunately for William Morris, this was made in 1750. So in other words, William Morris is coming late. Yes? All right, arts and crafts again. This was made in approximately the year 1600. It's a drinking vessel, or to use polite language, simple language, a cup. Yes? It's about this big. And again, there's a bit there you can pour water into. It's a drinking vessel. Now, you've never seen a drinking vessel quite like that, right? Again, the whole thing about the art and craft thing that William Morris is supposed to come up with, again, 2 words. My school students used to say, "Bun that." And this is the most famous piece of them all, the Queen Mother head. Again, absolutely exquisite. Now you know why Benin art is considered as highly as it is. But this is, I'm about to drop 2 bombshells on you. This is the first one. Second one's coming. Right, Norris and Ross McWhirter, Guinness Book of Records, 21st edition, October 1974, page 129. The largest earthworks in the world carried out prior to the mechanical era were the linear earth boundaries of the Benin Empire, close brackets, Benin City, in the midwestern state of Nigeria. They were first reported by modern European scholars in 1903 and partially surveyed in 1967. In April 1973, it was estimated by Mr. Patrick Darling that the total length of the earthworks was probably between 5,000 and 8,000 miles. Right, did you know that the city of Benin's in the Guinness Book of Records? Right, we know this now. Yes? Largest earthenworks in the world. You heard that? Yes? You feeling that? Now you thought that I just dropped the bomb, didn't you? Didn't you? You thought I just dropped the bomb? Yeah. Now the bomb's coming. Deal with this. Jungle reveals traces of Sheba's fabled kingdom. A lost kingdom thought to be that of the fabled Queen of Sheba. No, it isn't. And possibly the earliest African city ever discovered, not true, has been found by a British archaeologist. He didn't find it. But let's be quite clear what they're talking about. They're talking about a city. You heard that first word. Right, we'll read on. Mr. Patrick Darling discovered the site, which covers more than 400 square miles. Did you hear what covers 400 square miles? What? A city. A city. Right, now let's get with this notion. A 400 square mile city. Are we feeling that? That is off the scale. Yeah? Now, modern London, I checked this, modern London inside the M25 is 600 square miles. But this is modern London. This is not modern. This is, when we read on, 1,200 years old. So in the year 800 AD, Africans built a 400 square mile city, the same size as 2/3 of modern day London. Are you feeling that?
Yes.
Now the whole point here is clearly, if Benin is in the Guinness Book of Records, that's just blown whatever record off the scale. You enjoying that? This was found at a site in South Africa called Mapungubwe, and it's dated somewhere around the year 1085, found in Mapungubwe. Now, what's interesting is, it's a rhino made of gold, yes, you can see that, but what's really interesting is that the parts in South Africa and Zimbabwe where the gold mining was done, the outcrop is granite. That makes sense? Which means you're going to have to bore through granite to get at the gold. Right? Now that then led to theories of how do you do that without dynamite? Well, the only logical explanation is they must have used dynamite. Yes? What's more, some of the mines are 150 feet deep. So how do you dig 150 feet through granite? Again, no theory has been forthcoming. And then two scholars, one was called Hall and the other one was called Neal, theorized, well, how much debris did they move? You waiting for this? Yep. They believe they moved 43.25 million tons of ore. Now, we need to get with this notion.
Still don't.
Your car weighs 3/4 of a ton. You understand that?
Yeah.
So 1 ton is more weight than your car. You follow me? Now, we didn't say 43 cars. You didn't hear that. You heard 43 million, or to be exact, 43.25 million tons of ore. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Which then, when you strip it down to pure gold, equals 700 tons of pure gold, equals at 1998 gold prices 7.5 billion US. Now that's what they shifted, not in the modern times, in the ancient times. Are we feeling that?
Yeah, come on.
Now, based on that, they were then able to start living fat. Right? And what we're seeing here is 12 buildings spread out over 3 square miles. So you can see walling going on here, walling going on here, walling going on here. Now, this is the point, because the walls are less tall than the trees. Most people are thinking, oh, that's not very tall. Does that make sense? Yeah, but you're assuming these are ordinary trees, aren't you? Now, why would you be assuming that? We're feeling that? Yes? Now, we're getting some idea of scale here. All right, now, this is the capital city of the Southern African kingdoms, and eventually it grows into an empire. The city is called Great Zimbabwe. And then when we look at the other sites, we see typical styles of decorative walling used in the Munomatapan sites. Check pattern, dentelle pattern, chevron pattern. In other words, you can then teach an architecture class just using these walls. Right, that's one of the doorways into the Great Zimbabwe complex. Right, now, are we enjoying that? Now, can you see the trees compared to the gentleman? Right, now that's why I say not ordinary trees, yes? Now, what's interesting about the entire building complex is that no mortar and no lime has been used to join the bricks. In other words, this is what's called dry stone walling. And then you can see the chevron patterns along here. That makes sense? Now, notice the chevron starts here and goes through, it ends at one particular point. Now, why does it do that? Right, inside the complex. Now, it's a shame that there's nobody in the picture giving us some idea of scale, but I can correct that. Right, that's what it's believed to have looked like. Now, my man on the left with the boxer shorts, yeah? Yeah. That's not authentic dress, yeah? I bought this picture from Mambo Press, and whereas the rest of it is happening, what my man's wearing is not happening, yeah? When you read the accounts of what people were wearing, they would have worn what's called untailored clothes. Untailored basically means toga. You know the kind of toga thing that you see the Ashantis wearing? They would have been wearing that too. And they would have had ones where you had gold stitching being stitched through the cloth. Does that make sense? And then they would be held with rosette patterns, which would be these floral patterns. Yeah? Now, unfortunately, the person that drew this hadn't read that, because had they read that, they would have made my man a bit more stush for the occasion. Right, now, you enjoying that? Right then, now one of the rulers of Great Zimbabwe conquered a large chunk of southern Africa and then built the empire of Monomotapa. Now, Africans say Munomotapa, Europeans say Monomotapa. So this is what's here. Let's read it. Le Grand Roi Monomotapa, the great king of Monomotapa, with his crown, with his scepter, with his cape. That makes sense? Now that's how they would have been stepping. Now, what empire did they build? Let me show you something. M-O-N-O-M-O-T-A-P-A. Monomotapa. Can you see it's all this? Right, now, if we look at this objectively, that's somewhere between, what, a quarter to a third of Africa. Yeah? In other words, about the same size of territory as what the Emperor of the World, Emperor Taharqa, had going on. Now, what's really interesting about this map is this here, Zimbabwe. See that? That's Zimbabwe. Making quite clear that was the old capital. Now, the Empire of Monomotapa is Zimbabwe, which was its center, Mozambique, South Africa at least as far as Johannesburg, Botswana, and a bit of Angola. In other words, it was massive, one of the largest political units the black race has ever produced. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And they founded this empire somewhere around the year 1100, and they held it intact right up until 1629. 1629 is when it was all over, when the empire was then destroyed by Portuguese slave raiders. Right, now, can you see there's somebody in the picture? Now, had that person not been there, you wouldn't have known how big that was, would you? Right then, now decorating these monuments are these soapstone sculptures. And these soapstone sculptures, they represent birds, and some people say, wait a minute, isn't that a little bit like the falcon thing in Egypt? Yes, and that kind of discussion has happened. Now these soapstone things, they're now on the money. You know, in Zimbabwe, they're now symbols on the money, making it quite clear that people is using their history. Yes? Right, now, this is the city of Kami. Now, doesn't that look like something out of Milton Keynes? Doesn't it look like Milton Keynes? I grew up in Milton Keynes. Trust me, that looks like Milton Keynes. Meaning, again, modernism. Even though this is the medieval world. Right then, now. Right now, the whole point, people ask me, Robin, why is any of this stuff relevant? Now, can you see that if that's the alternative, we need to get with our history? Now, a lot of people want to blame black youngsters for gun crime and other things. Remember, black youngsters are only a reflection of black elders. So if there's gun crime, black elders can't say it's not their fault. It is their fault. Yes? Now, it's not just youngsters where there's a problem where we need to be getting with our history. Check some before and afters.
Stop. Yeah, that's serious. Oh dear.
Right. Now, the before and afters, this is what happens when people don't know their history. And if you don't know your history, if you don't think your history is relevant, then you'll end up doing all sorts of negative things to yourself to try and look like some other group of people. Whereas you don't need to be doing that.
That's right.
Now, just to bring the history relevant, problem 24 in the Rhine Papyrus, by which the problem is solved by means of an unknown quantity, aha. This is the earliest example of algebraic procedure. Right, did we know then that black people invented algebra? There's the proof. And therefore, if people knew their history, if people knew that their history was relevant, then they wouldn't want to be trying to aspire to be somebody else.
That's right, that's right.
Right, the calibration of the Karnak water clock. Right, let me explain this. Right, what's going on here? There's a water clock where if you look at the inside of it, we've got it divided up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months, right? And then at certain points of the month, the days get longer and shorter. Does that make sense? And therefore, the calibration of the holes is different. So each hole is 1 hour. So you get it? So when you fill it, there's your first hour, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th. You follow me? And then by the time it runs out, 12 hours. So we've got 12 hours of the night is what this actually represents. Now, the idea of the hour That's an African concept. We invented that. The concept of time is an African concept. We invented that. So we've got the concept of numbers and algebra. We've now got the concept of time. And then when you put the two concepts together, you can then start mapping the heavens. And mapping the heavens gives you the notion of the year. Now, this is important because this is on the, what they call it, ceiling of a monument called the Temple of Dendera. And on the Temple of Dendera, let's look at some details we see here. Here we see what's clearly Sagittarius. See that? See this? Leo. See that? What else can we see? Two fishes. Pisces. Yes? And then we can then go on pointing out this or that, yeah? Now what's the really interesting one? This one right here. Yes? Cancer. But it's not a crab, it's a dung beetle. Because of course, Europe is what turned it into a crab because they don't have dung beetles. The fact that that's a dung beetle, proof, yes? Africans came up with this. And this concept here, the 12 signs of the zodiac becomes the 12 months of the year. And then later religions will turn it into the 12 tablets of Gilgamesh, which is what the Sumerians were running with. The 12 labors of Heracles is what the Greeks were running with, you follow me? And then certain religions then turn it into 12 tribes of this, 12 disciples of that. Are we feeling this?
Yes.
Right, then we have, you know the whole thing about us above, so below? Right, let me explain this. When Christopher Columbus was running up his mouth about having discovered the Americas, a Turkish admiral called Piri Reis realized then, as most of the Islamic world did, Columbus is a fraud. And my man didn't just say Columbus is a fraud, he proved Columbus is a fraud. And the way he did it is that he assembled maps that go all the way back to the Alexandrian period of Egypt. And then once he assembled those maps, he then published the composite map. Does that make sense? Now, can you see that's the coast of Africa? Where's this? That's Brazil, surely. Where's this? Mexico. These islands here, where are they? The Caribbean. So here we see South America, Brazil and so on, has already been mapped. Are we feeling this? Mexico and those places have already been mapped. Now you'll see that the map tears at this point, right? And then the research went to a cartographer at the University of New Hampshire. The cartographer's name was Professor Charles Hapgood. And then Hapgood and his students, they worked on this map to work out where was the geodetic center of the map. That makes sense? Because the map's torn. So you have to use what's there to work out where the center of the map would be. That makes sense? Have a guess where the center of the map is. It is Africa. It's the Egyptian-Nubian border. Oh dear. That means that whoever was responsible for mapping this, they were standing on the Egyptian-Nubian border. Yes? Right, now we talked about the mapping of the heavens, we talked about the mapping of Earth, now we're going to talk about the mapping of inside a person. Right, there's a scholar called Naim Akbar, and he's one of our best psychologists, and he studied ancient Egyptian concepts and realized that the Egyptians had not just worked out advanced ideas in psychology, their ideas were so advanced that modern psychology is not caught up with where they were at. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Right, let me explain it. Here we've got some Egyptian concepts of the soul. Now, let me introduce the discussion. If I was to deal with what makes a human being, most of us would say, well, if you cut your arm off, you're still you. If you cut your second arm off, you're still you. Cut your legs off, you're still you. So there comes a point where it's not you. And where it's not you is when you lose your personality. That's what most people would think. Meaning that a human being is part physical, part personality. Or to use the Descartesian sense, part mind, part body. Now when Descartes said that, everyone said, yeah, wicked idea. Not realizing that this was about to be dug up. And when this was dug up, they found out that the Egyptians divided people into Ka, Ba, Kaibit, Ab, Kat, Sahu, Ku. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So what? Once you know that the Ka is the person's spirit, that's one aspect of a person. Ba, that's the person's personality, that's the second aspect of a person. Kaibit, this is the person's shadow, that's the third aspect of a person. Ab, that's the person's heart, that's the seat of consciousness. I mean, from a point, conscience, because that's what gets heavy when you do something wrong. Then you've got the Kat, that's your physical body, that's what stays right here and is recycled with all the elements like everything else. Then you've got the Sahu, which is in the heavens, your double. And then you've got your Ku, which is the heart of the double. Does that make sense? Now, can you see that's blowing mind and body out of the water? Now, this is the point. Once we accept that a human being is all of these elements, yeah, therefore spirituality has a scientific purpose. And that scientific purpose is to unify these different selves into a coherent one. Now we have a working definition of mental illness. Mental illness is where these are not coordinated. Does that make sense? Now, who came up with this idea? Us, thousands of years ago. And we can use it if we know our history. Right, Sheikh Anta Diop says, the African history proceeded without interruption. The first Nubian dynasties were prolonged by the Egyptian dynasties until the occupation of Egypt by the Indo-Europeans starting in the 5th century BC. Nubia remained the sole source of culture and civilization until about the 6th century AD. And then Ghana seized the torch from the 6th century until 1240, when its capital was destroyed by Sundiata Keita. This heralded the launching of the Mandingo Empire of Mali. Next came the Empire of Gao, Songhai, the Empire of Yatenga in today's Burkina Faso, and the kingdoms of Jolof and Kayo, Senegal, destroyed by Faidherbe under Napoleon III. In listing this chronology, we wanted to show that there was no interruption in African history. It is evident that, if starting from Nubia and Egypt, we had followed a continental geographical direction such as Nubia, Gulf of Benin, which is what we did, Nubia, Congo, Nubia, Mozambique, which would take us to Muna Mutapa, which is what we did. The course of African history would still have appeared to be uninterrupted. This is the perspective in which the African past should be viewed. People want more? There it is.
Right, that was how many felt the year we had in about an hour.
7,000.
It was serious stuff. Well worth it. I'm just gonna say, open up the floor for any questions or comments. We're a family, although some of us haven't met yet, so if that's the case, we introduce ourselves, say who we are to our family, and what we'll do is take a few questions at a time, and then we'll get Brother Robin to respond to the questions if necessary. So that's it, Brother. This is the floor of them.
Could you introduce yourself before you? Yeah.
Also, room 2, well, question for you as well.
My name is Ruben, and I'm from Ghana. Actually, Robert, I'm interested in another terracotta army that was brought to the museum from China. I just want to know, how old are they? How old is that?
They're said to be 1000 BC.
Thank you.
Still taking questions, brothers.
Yes. Greetings, brother. Greetings, sir. I'm Ras Pende. I heard a young person was querying something, and I would like to query it as well. If you could just explain, Brother Robin, the concept of the moon dying and rebirthing, yeah? And also, where exactly is Carthage?
Okay. Right. Let me answer your first question. Second question first. Carthage is Tunisia. Yeah. Okay. The moon dying and rebirthing. What it is that a lot of religious ideas are connected to celestial ideas. In other words, a lot of things are connected to the sun, the moon, and the stars. And in the ancient Egyptian tradition, the deity Osiris, which is the god of resurrection, is connected to the moon. And if you know that the moon waxes and wanes 14 times in the course of a month, when we read the mythology surrounding Osiris, he's cut up into 14 pieces. That makes sense? Now, at the end of the lunar cycle, the moon disappears for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, it's back. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And the idea then, that was then the death of Osiris, and then 3 days later he's resurrected.
Anything from room 2?
You coming?
And room 1 as well. Close to the
Tell them right. I have a question. This was like a history lesson in an hour, very crammed, but what would you suggest for people who want to learn more history, i.e. adults, children, etc.? Is there anything in the community, etc. that people can go to?
Certain people are doing courses, yeah, and aren't there classes happening here in Amazon?
Well,
Tenmar.
sorry, there are different history classes, but what I'm saying is I think in terms of concise history, in our schools, etc., in the book, but I mean in terms of like the people that are in the educational system, are there any kind of, I suppose, hope of getting in the schools?
That's a different question. There is hope, actually, but what it is that the black community has to have a strategy to lobby schools. In other words, the head of history, someone must know who that person is. Someone must know where that person eats. Someone must know where that person drinks. Someone must know where that person parties. And that person has to be lobbied. And then with some lobbying, then, you know, what parents can do is point heads of history, either in my direction or in Des Robinson's direction, and we can actually give them resources that they can use. Yeah? So there's ways and means it can be done. As far as ordinary people getting with black history, there's a book that came out in 2006 that just happens to be called So in other words,
I recommend it.
Yeah, there is literature that people can get.
Turn down, Maury. Just because Brother Robin just kind of partially answered an aspect of your question. Sister Amitai, who is also teaches what we call it African world history. It's called Black History classes. Some of you may be familiar with Robin Walker's classes. She teaches children in the academy. So Sister Amitai that teaches. But Brother Des Robinson also is a black study teacher that works alongside Brother Robin Walker. Will be teaching African world history for adults here. So if you are interested, you can give your name before you leave to know. And I don't know when Brother Robin is going to start back his classes.
January.
January.
Okay.
I'm doing one this Sunday, but you're going up to Birmingham, a 5-week course.
That's right,
yeah, starting on Sunday. And I thought, and hearing that you're living in Walthamstow, I thought, if you want to live, I'll take you up there. I'm done with the 5-week course, you know, and get those information. But that 5-week course, I was going to try and find out, are you not running it locally?
Starting in January.
Okay, that's the same one, yeah?
No, the same venue, different course.
The same venue, because that's in Birmingham.
No, but I'm talking in London.
Okay.
In other words, I will be running a 30-week course in London and 5-week courses in London.
In your seminar, you mentioned a museum, the Petrie Museum of Egyptians in Mallet Street.
Mallet Street, yeah.
Mallet Street.
Yeah, it's part of the University College London. What it is, it does exist. I mean, ask at the University College London where it is, and it's free admission, and they've been keeping it very, very quiet.
Yeah, so any member of the public can go.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be a student of the...
No.
Okay, alright.
No. And ask for catalogue number UC15989 and see if they don't show you that portrait statue.
UC
15989.
Tender reminder, please we introduce ourselves. Bear in mind as well that the camera is beaming into room 2, so if you can raise our voices as well, so our own sisters in room 2 can hear as well.
Sorry, my name is Tessa.
But it'd be better if
Thank you for answering that question.
Standing would be ideal, but you know, if you're not inclined to that, but raise your voice and say who you are.
Please. No, I'm saying please.
Oh, there you go. That's right.
That's like policeman.
While still people are working on their questions, can I ask another one, please? Brother Robin, I know some. I was contacted by someone recently who was doing a campaign for getting Black history taught in schools, right? As part of the national curriculum. And I know there is different opinions about it. You know, we don't want them teaching our history. We should teach our history. But some people say if our history is taught in schools, then a lot more children will get access to it. And you know, could you give us some ideas of what you think about teaching of Black history in school? Not just approaching the history teacher of one particular school, but nationally. You know. Thank you.
Yeah. The reason why I said approaching history teachers is because that is the only way of getting Black history to schools. Not one of the ways, the only way. Now, why is it the only way? It is the, I hope people are getting this, the only way, because the government is having a laugh at the Black community's expense when they are talking about getting it into the national curriculum. And why they're having a laugh is that it's already on the national curriculum. That's why they're having a laugh. And what it is that they know the Black community hasn't read the document. And because the Black community hasn't read the document, the Black community doesn't know what's in the document. And meanwhile, the government's been laughing at us for the last 20 years because it's been on the national curriculum for the last 20 years. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Right, now, why haven't schools run with it? It's there. Why haven't they done it? Because nobody's lobbied the head of history to tell them this is what we want. Right, so just to substantiate what I've said, there is something called the Key Stage 2 National Curriculum for History. You are obligated to teach one of 6 civilizations: Egypt, Benin, Assyria, Sumer, Indus Valley, and Mayan. Most schools go for Egypt. It's on the national curriculum, so most schools do that. Now, why don't they teach Egypt as an African civilization? Because nobody lobbied the head of history to get them to make sure they did that. In Key Stage 3, secondary school, you can teach the history of a non-European society just so long as it's not one of the 6 that's on the primary school list. So if you wanted to you could do the Benin Empire. If you wanted to, you could do the Mulatapa Empire. So why haven't schools done this? Because no one's lobbied them to get them to do it. So in reality, they will do their own thing, Black peoples of the Americas, which is pure slave history. Yeah? Now, when the government is saying, we're going to change it and we're going to put Black history on the national curriculum, they already know it's there. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I say they're laughing at our expense. So, progress. If we want progress, there's only one way we can do it. Lobby the heads of history. There is no other way it's going to happen, if it's going to happen at all.
But can I say, sorry, hi, my name's Marie. Because you've been an assistant, you were a teacher, yeah? And you're out of assistant, you've clearly, I mean, you've spent a lot of years researching, presentation, everything is second to none, brilliant. So, are you not passionate? Do you not feel you could go and do something? Because you know it's there and you know what to do. You know the contacts.
Can you
Feel...
see that I've got better things to be doing with my time than lobbying? Now if somebody else does the lobbying and then they point them in my direction, I can do something.
No,
but I've got far better things to be doing.
Okay, we're not talking about lobbying. I mean, if someone an organisation organises the meeting where you're going and you're meeting with the
it's about the same thing.
Okay.
Whoever organises that meeting will have to lobby.
Okay, but what is actually the fact that you were in the system? Have you just sort of stepped back and said, that's it? I mean, you're going out, you're doing a presentation, you're selling.
No, this is what I'm doing. I'm saying to people, if they want black history in schools, there's only one way they can do it. However, my time is precious, and my time is not going to be spent lobbying heads of history. What better thing to do? So if somebody somebody else wants to do that, and they point the head of history in my direction, then something can happen.
Yeah.
But that's the way around. Yeah. It's going to go down.
So just be on an individual basis, though.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is not very.
No, but can you see that there's no other way? Just because it's on the national curriculum, it's been there for 20 years. Why did they do it 20 years ago? They're not going to do it unless the black community lobbies them.
I would be doing in our school.
Right.
Sure.
Question.
Greetings.
Greetings to them.
The camera to see it. Your handsome face.
The camera.
Camera.
Yes, they can see it.
Okay, my name is Stephen Sally, and I just wanted, was very impressed with your presentation, and I just wanted to ask, there's a chart to show called a Dendron chart, which I've seen somewhere. I just wanted to find out if you could shed some light on how it was used in the past by people, and also how it relates to astrology and things like that. Thank you.
The Dendera chart is symbolic. In other words, it wasn't used directly. Yeah? But why it's there is it shows what the ancient Egyptians knew. Right? Now, what it is the grouping of the stars of the heavens into houses of 12 is where we get the 12 months of the year from. That's that same concept. Does that make sense? Exactly the same concept. And so the 12 houses of the heavens become the 12 months of the year. And then certain constellations are associated with each house. And that tells you when we move from month 1 to month 2, from month 2 to month 3. Now, in Western tradition, we call the first month January, the second one February, and so on and so forth. Yeah? When we go back to ancient Egypt, they had their own names for each one. The first month was originally called the month of Hathor, and so on and so forth. But it's the same 12-month concept. Does that make sense? Now, the grouping of the stars into houses and then into constellations, then a whole series of stories started to develop about each constellation. That makes sense? And then those stories, the Greeks wrote it down as their mythology. That makes sense? So Greek mythology is really the start. Now, where did the Greeks get this concept from? They conquered Egypt in 332 BC, and they saw it on the Dendera something, yeah? And then what happened was, when the Greek civilization goes into decline, the Romans then become the next group of civilized Europeans. That makes sense? And because one of the Roman emperors was having an affair with one of the Greek queens of Egypt, Cleopatra VII, Cleopatra VII told her, well, the Egyptians, this is what the Egyptians do. And then that's how they ended up reforming the calendar, where you ended up with 30 months in each, 30 days in each month. That makes sense? And then Julius Caesar decides to big up himself and give himself an extra day, July. And then Augustus Caesar says, whatever my dad can do, I can do. So he gave himself an extra day, August. That makes sense? Yeah. And then they had to take days from February and so on to get it to even out. Yeah? And then, once the Greeks have got hold of the zodiac, they realised they don't have dumb people in Greece. So what's the next best thing? Cancer, the crab. Yeah? And then the basis of astrology has been that ever since. But let's be quite clear, many other nations have their versions of it too. 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 labours of Heracles, 12 tribes of this, 12 disciples of... It's the same concept. Yeah?
I just have a very quick question. I just wanted to find out,
Can we
you've
find out
done...
what your name is?
Sorry?
Can we find out what your name is?
Oh, Lisa Lloyds. I just wanted to find out, you've done a book on When We Ruled. Have you ever done a history like Alex Haley on your family background? I understand you said Walker's a Scottish name. Have you?
Yeah, and that's precisely why I haven't done a... Here's the point, yeah. If I find out that I've got any Scottish uni, I'll be so vexed.
But what about like the African side? Cause, like,
well, I'm African, so it's cool.
Okay.
I don't need the genealogy to prove that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That's really the mirror test.
Oh no. Not for the history, not for I mean, like to say that you're African, but like Alex Haley to actually find out where you're from. Has that ever interested you personally?
As far as I'm concerned, whether I'm a Moor or a Zulu, I know business. And when it comes to which part of Africa I'm going to big up, I don't care if it's bigging up the Moors or bigging up the Zulus or anybody in between. I know business. So for me, it's all of Africa's history made by black people is mine.
That's right.
And I'm going to dig all of it up. And
That's right. First question from room 2. Any more from room 2? Any more questions? While waiting for that room, or any more questions from room 1? Any of our younger people want to ask any questions? Is a young brother at the front?
I just want to.
No, raise up the way. You know the camera really wants to raise up himself.
Okay. First of all, I'm very, very honored to be in your presence. First of all, and also to say that I really appreciate all you're doing to help our history to be known by a wider people who probably wouldn't be in the conscious community to listen to what you're saying. And knowing that we've been through what we've been through, the Ma'afa and everything, how can we rebuild a way forward for us in 2007 that can recreate our past glories of the great empires we had? Because the current status of the race at the moment, we seem to be going through such a point in time where we're so disillusioned in so many things. And if we don't have a great past, how can we recreate that today to relive our moments as African people?
all right, for me, the first thing that we need to do is know our history. And then once we get to a situation where enough black people know their history, we can then start calling our own commissions. We can call it the African Commission. Why are we in the state that we're in? That makes sense? Yeah? And then once we can answer that question, why are we in the state that we're in, we can then start looking at what went wrong. But we can only have that discussion if we know our history. Let me explain why. If we don't know our history, then we will think that we came out of the African jungle somewhere, and therefore any progress from the African jungle is progress. Does that make sense? Now, only if you know your history will you know that's not true. But if you don't know your history, you can't have that discussion. Secondly, when we look at the bigger aspects of African history, I mean, most of us are aware that there are black people in the Philippines. They're a part of our history too. And they built stuff. There are black people in the Melanesian Islands, and they built stuff. So in other words, when it comes to our fall to where we are, it's not just the people in Africa that fell. Black people worldwide. Does that make sense? So there's an awful lot of rebuilding, but we can only have that discussion if we know our history. Yeah? Right, once we have the discussion, then we will find out that we weren't just mashed up historically. We were mashed up religiously. We were mashed up spiritually. We were mashed up technologically. We were mashed up sociologically. We were mashed up economically. We were mashed up artistically.
Just mash up completely.
Yeah, and therefore, once you've been smashed up in every single area, you have to rebuild in every single area. That is not just about building political states.
That's right.
That's just rebuilding the politics.
That's right.
It has to be rebuilding the economics,
That's right.
rebuilding the science,
That's right.
rebuilding the technology, rebuilding the arts, rebuilding the religion, rebuilding the sociology. You follow me?
Education.
All of this has to be there.
That's right.
Because the one that's not there will be the ones that our enemies will use to mash us up again.
Word.
And that's the scale of the rebuilding. So what it means then for us now is that we have to not just know our history. The history is the beginning, but we have to be knowledgeable about what do we mean by black political science. We need to know how that works. What do we mean by black economics? We need to know how that works. What do we mean by black sociology? We need to know how that works. All of these areas, because anyone that's missing will be the same area that will be used to undermine us.
Tinamore, I have a quick question. I'm Brother Umawale of the Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement. Robin, how many years did it take you to reach to this point where you are now in terms of study? And I'm presuming there are, so I'm going to say, what challenges were there for you? Because we know a lot of our scholars, they had a great deal of challenges obtaining certain information. So what challenges were there for yourself, my brother?
Okay, I began studying African history in the year 1990. As I started reading information, I found out that there were friends around me who were well ahead of the game. And some of those friends got me going to things like Hackney Black People's Association, which in those days was happening. It was happening big time. And I went to see one of the African American professors lecture, Professor Jacob Carruthers. And while I was there, I saw people that were ahead of the game, far ahead of the game, and I was behind the game. And I got a phone call. No, it has to be said. No, because the reason I'm saying this.
Bear with us, my brother. That's hard to believe.
No. And what happened was I got a phone call from a girlfriend saying that there's a guy called Femi Biko and he's teaching something. So go. And we went, and it was a shock to the system, the best way of describing it. And I studied with Femi for a few years. I studied with one of his students, Mr. Kenny Bakey. And at the time I was a night porter in a hotel. And so I could study during the nights because everyone's asleep. Yeah? And so that's what I did. And Femi asked me to teach one of his courses at New Initiatives, which is in South London. And at some point I bumped into a Zimbabwe gentleman called Fari Supia. And Fari revolutionized my work. I met a Nigerian gentleman called Benebi Benatari, who also revolutionized my work. And the concepts that these two men brought to the game elevated the game. And so much so that I regard Benebi's one of the greatest geniuses our people have ever produced. And Fari is going to be the next Diop. Yeah. So being around these people, they were able to critique my work in ways that was constructive. Ray Bowen also critiqued my work in ways that was constructive and got me to raise the game. And, all right, cut a long story short, 1999 I wrote Classical Splendor, Roots of Black History. A lot of people who should have been feeding that book weren't. And I had to ask, well, why? You should be feeding this book. They weren't feeding it. And so it was back, you know, back to the drawing board. And then the result was 2006 when we ruled. Right, you said problems. There hasn't been any really. It's just, the only issue has been the kind of, if someone critiques your work, it's very tempting to go on the defensive. And I don't go on the defensive. If someone's got something to say, you listen to it, and if it raises your game, run with it. And I have to thank Ray Bowen, Fari Supia, and Ben Aby, because my game would not be where it is if it wasn't for them and the standards that they set.
Hi, my name is Safran. You made mention of two scholars that revolutionized your work. Can you spell the names for me?
Fari, F-A-R-I, Supia, S-U-P-I-Y-A. That's one of them. Ben Aby, B-E-N, A-E-B-I. Benatari, B-E-N, A-T-A-R-I.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Brother Robin. In terms of actually obtaining information, because I know certain scholars have, as I said, found it difficult to even get certain photographs, etc. I mean, you briefly touched on in Britain. Did you have any problems there? None whatsoever?
No, this is the situation. If you think someone's not going to give you a photograph to use, speak to them over the phone and be very awfully. And sometimes you can get, because they don't have to see my black face, you see. So that's one way of doing stuff. Another way is bum kissing. Sometimes it has to go down that way. But it has to be said, there have been some people that have, there have been some people that really stepped correctly. I mean, I'm very impressed with the Sudanese ambassador who said to me, "You want a picture of what?" "Yeah, so it's hanging up on my wall. What do you want to do? Do you want to take it away? Do you want to photograph it? What do you want?" And the guy basically had a picture like this of the kiosk in the city of Naga. And he let me, doesn't know me from Adam, let me take it away, get it filmed, and I returned it to him. You know what I'm saying? You had stuff like that. Yeah? So yeah, I mean, same thing, the Nigerian embassy said to me, "Well, you want to look around? Yeah, photocopy what you want and just let us know afterwards." So, yeah, people stepped up. And also I have as well, a lot of black people putting their hands in their pockets to buy photographs. And that's one message as well that I want people to know. If black people think you're going to succeed, they will support you. Make no mistake. And I had people, putting their hand in their pockets. I mean, some serious money to buy photographs and that, this, that, and the other. So I didn't have the problems that the Ben Yokanans and the J.A. Rogers, I didn't have those problems. I didn't have George G.M. James having KKK coming after me. I didn't have that,
I have a quick question, Brother Robin.
Yes, sir.
In any point in the last week or so, were you ever tempted to pass a copy of your book on to one James Watson?
Not at all.
Prevent him to make any more public statements and embarrass himself before the world?
Yeah, the James Watson issue. As a student of Femi Biko, yeah.
Thank you.
Student of Femi Biko. Biko warned us a long time ago that there's a game that Europeans play with our academics. He didn't have a name for that game, but I call it cat and mouse, which is where their academic throws out some idea, and the idea could be the black race is unintelligent, and then we dance around that and we feel we have to respond. You tell them, you tell that guy. And then by the time you've responded, they come with their next game. Africa has no history. And then we research it to show that Africa does have a history. And then by the time they moved on to their next game, Africa started AIDS. And then by that time they moved on to the next game. The ethnic time bomb, 6 out of 10 black families in Britain, single parent mothers. And then by that time they moved the game on to black people, 10 times national average, HIV. You can just see where it's going, yeah? And there comes a point, as Dr. Biko says, where we just have to say, listen, bun that, yeah? And don't get involved, yeah? Now the bottom line is that Mr. Watson, as a geneticist, would know that he's talking doo-doo. But let me explain why he's talking doo-doo. If a trait has a genetic basis to it, black people will be at one end of the trait, and they'll be at the other end of the trait. And the reason why we'll be at both ends of the trait is we can't be compared to any European or Asian ethnic group. Why? We are the mothers and fathers of humanity. And once that fact is understood, we're going to be at one end of the trait and the other end of the trait. And that goes for all genetic traits. So for my man to claim that black people are at one end only, you know he's lying. Now, there's some other question marks that need to be raised, because I gather my man's supposed to be the father of the double helix. Yeah, now, I would wager that he didn't find that. I would wager that his research is a fraud, because his statement is not consistent with someone who knows what they're talking about. And therefore, I would want to question whether or not he actually did that research, or whether or not, in other words, we need to put him on the defensive so that he has to justify, did he actually do that paper or did he fake the paper? Because that statement coming from his mouth would imply he faked the paper.
He actually did a veiled apology and then said that what he is quoted as saying has no scientific theory behind it. So he actually made those pronouncements before he was kicked out of the UK. So he was trying to sort of
soften it.
And cover himself.
Here's why. Had he not said, and those people who have black employees know what I'm talking about, had he not said that, he could have got away with everything else. Once he then say, and people who work with black employees know what I'm talking about, there's no way that both statements can be misquoted. So I would say, if the black community is going to be proactive, we should try and get him to justify, not what he said, his double helix research, because I think the helix research is a fraud. And he should have to come back to say it's not a fraud. That's where, and that, can you see now, he's not playing cat and mouse with us. We're playing cat and mouse with him.
Sounds a little bit like office games. If you put yourself in a working situation where someone will always try and make you run around the office, run around the office, you let them run around.
Absolutely. Question on that.
My name is Karen. I just wanted to say, in terms of that DNA double helix theory, it's not necessarily that it's a fraud, but he actually stole it from one of his female colleagues, like him and his partner Crick. They didn't actually come up with it, they actually ripped it off completely and then accused her of being mentally unstable or something like that.
If you steal it and put it as yours, that's wrong.
Yeah, but she worked on it, but she didn't get any credit for it. They just took the research and just left her out completely. They didn't really come up with it themselves.
Oh, there it is. No, thanks for that piece of information.
Then, my brothers and sisters, can I just use this opportunity now to pass the collection bowl around, brothers and sisters? Please, liberation bowl, I should say. Please give generously, brothers and sisters. Yeah.
While that's going around, any more questions? We've got one of the world's best scholars in our midst.
That's right.
And he's busy, the busy man, up and down the country teaching. We've got now his brothers and sisters, so make use of this opportunity while you can here and now.
Give thanks to Brother Robin for coming here this evening and delivering. Give thanks to Brother Robin for coming here this evening and sharing vital information to our community. You slightly touched on it earlier, but if you can give us share with us your particular angle on this whole DNA, where they're encouraging people to go and check out their personal DNA to see what aspect of them is this or what aspect. What's your angle? Do you think it will advance anything in terms of our race? What's your particular angle on it?
I can just see a recipe for foolishness. Here's why. Just suppose I did it and I turned out to be Igbo, which is personally what I think I am, actually. Right? So what? Does that mean that my loyalty is to the Igbos, or is my loyalty to Africa? Which one? You follow me? Now you can just see that if every black person diaspora tested themselves and you turned out to be Igbo, I turned out to be Yoruba, you turned out to be Hausa, you turned out to be Fulani, are we on one program or are we on 4 programs? Which one?
10 that money. Half the time you turn out to be 40% German.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Now,
the first program, that's what the man tried to do. People are 40% or 50%.
Yeah, that's what they want to do.
And then throwing two white people and them turn out to be Igbo.
So I mean, my view. So if people do it and get strength out of it, cool. But me personally, I can't see any value in it whatsoever, other than just so that it does embarrass people from time to time. You know, Carol Thatcher turned out to be 1/4 Arab. Gary Bushell, yes him, turned out to be 8% African. So in other words, stuff like that. In other words, I like to see when it embarrasses people, but you know, I saw a man fall at that hurdle. I'm not going to fall at the same hurdle.
Once again, give thanks for coming and presenting. My question is centered around the book and the title of the book in terms of why you decided to call it When We Ruled. And the reason why I asked the question is because I've heard a bit of a school of thought in the sense that we tend to focus on, when we're studying our history, we tend to focus on rulership or monarchy or rare, and it's like, but I mean, just watching the presentation, it was obvious that the civilization wasn't built by one person; it was built by people, so to speak. But I don't know, what's your position on the whole When We Ruled thing, and why did you decide to call it that? And what's your answer to people that would criticize you based on the fact that you called it When We Ruled, and you know those kind of things?
Okay, that wasn't going to be the original title. The original title was going to be When We Were Kings.
Okay.
I took it to my publisher, Patrick Vernon, and he said, "Why not make it gender neutral?"
Yeah.
So so if you turn When We Were Kings into gender neutral, When We Ruled. Right? And the advantage of When We Ruled, the fact it's 3 W's, and my surname is W. That means anyone going into a bookshop, they can't not find the book. You get it? Because there's only one place you can put the book based on that. Right, so we're thinking about that too. Right. Okay, now the title of the book, When We Ruled. Let's be quite clear. When we deal with history, any history, history of any people is about their greats, is about their achievements, it's about their grandeur, it's about their majesty. Any people. Because history, Maulana Karenga says, is the record and process of a people engaged in struggle to shape the world in their interests and images. So if you're being shaped, it's not your history, it's somebody else's. Therefore, our losses and our defeats is not Black history. Yeah. Now we need to know our losses. We need to know our defeats. So based on that, every chapter in the book is about how the civilizations were built, how they rose, and I do talk about how they fell. Why? Part of this whole thing about the commission idea. We need to know why we fell. But the bottom line is that the grandeur of our history is not when we fell, it's what we built. So anyone who says, but Robin, isn't that right wing? Shouldn't we be talking about the ordinary person? I deal with the ordinary person too, but within a context of a high civilization. And our civilizations, it has to be quite clear, the civilizations I'm dealing with in the book and the civilizations of our past were high civilizations. Now, a lot of people want to half step on that. They want to present Egypt as a high civilization and the rest of Africa as jungle cultures. I'm not feeling that. And you ain't going to get that coming out of my book. So the whole thing then about When We Ruled. The other thing too was putting When We Ruled and putting Queen Tia's face on the front cover. I can't believe that anybody could walk past that and not pick the book up, if only to find out who we is. You know, it says When We Ruled. We were thinking that too.
Just a quick question, Brother. You mentioned this in your presentation, but I want specifics now. When you're going through the early kingdom, middle kingdom, etc., and what's going on elsewhere in the world, just give me, at least not much. But actually, what? Give me some.
Yeah. Okay, but
there were people there, so what were these people doing?
Og. That's what they do.
Okay, just so we're clear.
Okay, let's be quite clear. Let's be quite clear.
Building huge garbage heaps.
Well, yeah, that assumes that they made something and threw it away.
You're the professor.
Why would we be assuming that, sir? Alright, very simply, let me give you some kind of timeline. Alright, 5900 BC, Tar Seti, land of Set. Everywhere else on the planet, including Egypt, Og. Yes? 5660 BC, Egypt is now civilization. Everywhere except Tar Seti and Egypt, Og. You get it? 3300 BC, Sumer, the first civilization in Asia. Yes? Heard of the Sumerians? Now what you didn't know is they were us, speaking Niger Congo, an African language. Yes, they were us, speaking Niger Congo. Apart from those three civilizations, Tar Seti, Kemet, Sumer, everybody else, Og. 3150 BC, Elam rises. Elam is next door, Iran. They were us. And Black Susians, as they're called, they're still there. 3000 BC, Pakistan, there's a civilization called Indus Valley. And guess what? They were us too. And this will shock people. There are 100 million Negroes in modern day India. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And this 100 million people, they carry something called sickle cell. Not to be confused with light-skinned Hindus who've got thalassemia, sickle trait, different disease. Yes? So there's a clear demarcation line of who's us and who's not.
So can you say that again?
100 million Negroes in modern day India. Yeah? Right, now, the reason why we need to know this is that, again, that's again us. So by the time we get to about 3000 BC, you've got 6 civilizations on the planet. What's the rest of the world doing? Now, 2500 BC, Stonehenge goes up in Britain. Yeah? But there's controversy over who built it. Because logic would say, of course Europeans built it, it's in Europe. Do you know that Europeans don't say that?
No.
All right. Straw poll. How many of you did Stonehenge in school? You specifically did it in school. Specifically. You know it's not on the national curriculum. No, it's not. I've read the national curriculum history documents. Stonehenge is not on the national curriculum. Right, would anyone like to speculate why it's not on the national history curriculum? Surely it should be the national monuments of Britain. In other words, they know there's a problem. That's why they don't go there. You follow me? And they really don't go there. Similarly, there's monuments just like Stonehenge in France, and they've got the same problem. In France, they don't go there. You follow me? So even when we see civilization of sorts, like Stonehenge and all the rest of it, Europeans don't go there because they know there's problems. So what they do is they just leave that one alone and hope that you're not going to bring it up because they're not going to bring it up. Yeah? Okay, European civilizations, we know it. The first one is Greece, 750 BC. The second one is Rome, 400 BC. Outside of Greece and Rome, everywhere else is Og. Get it? And then the Romans, they conquer Britain 43 BC or 43 AD, can't remember, under Julius Caesar. And it's them that civilized the people of Britain. And guess what? The Romans claimed that there was 2 populations living here. One was white, and who do you think the other one was? Us. Yeah? And that's the population who built Stonehenge, by the way. Yeah? So in other words, we can then so in other words, when Europeans talk about their history, they begin with Greece and Rome. They're only dealing with within the last 3,000 years, because that's what they're comfortable with. Outside of that, they're not there. And then outside of 2000 BC, the Semites aren't there. Yeah.
Question here.
Okay, just wanted to comment on the answer you were giving earlier on that I was listening to a tape from somebody American. He said basically that in European history they eliminated all the wars which they lost in the Zululand, and they only showed the war that they won.
Correct.
And the same thing happened in the cowboy and Indian movies, they only show them winning. And I just wanted to shed some light on what Dr. Alvin said, where he said that the reason why the Egyptian civilization lasted so long is because they only filled their children with the victories and achievements of their people.
Did Akhenaten say that?
That's what I said. Somebody said that on a tape, and I just wondered if you can clarify that.
To be honest, I can't imagine Akhenaten saying that. Because Akhenaten was exactly the opposite. He was a pacifist. A great man, but not what we needed at that time. We needed someone to be kicking some butt. So lining up some behinds and dealing. Man didn't do that. So I suspect he's been misquoted.
Okay.
But certainly we do need to tell our victories. But let's be quite clear. We also need, because the point of history is, well, we need to be honest with our defeats too. Because that's where we then can call the commissions on why did we lose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the whole point of losing, in my view, is not to keep on losing. You lose, you regroup, so the next time you win. You get it, yeah?
Okay, sure.
What he does is traces music from ancient Egypt through to blues.
Right.
Yeah? And having read his stuff, having read other African musicologists, yeah, there's a guy called J.H. Kwabena Nketia, who's also written on black music. There's a guy called Albert Murray, who's written on African American music. And what I've done is I glued them together. I wrote an essay called Journey of the Drum, which Paul Bonner pirated and put on the web, because I didn't put it on the web. But if you Google it on the web, there's an essay called Journey of the Drum.
Okay.
And that's the spread of black music.
Right, okay.
Any more questions? Room 2?
Any more questions?
Alright, just a show of hands. How many of us in the room have got when we rule, by the way? That's fair enough. There's two more to get. So, yeah. How many are going to get when we rule? We haven't got it. That's more of the
I must say, I probably won't get through past chapter 1, 2, 3, because you clearly say you have to read chapter 1, 2, 3, read it and understand it before you can move on. And I'm thinking, am I ever going to get to chapter 4? But if I keep coming to your presentations, I think it will help me. Yeah.
Okay. That question then?
Yep.
Tenemore, Brother Abiami, Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement. I mean, I was very fortunate enough to study under Brother Robin, both at advanced level and beginners level. And just kind of wanted to ask you, Brother Robin, where do you take it now? What's next?
For you. Okay, for me, it's about. I'm proud to say that I've got a bunch of people teaching black studies in Birmingham. And the long-term thing, maybe 3 years' time, 2 years' time, it'll be to get a bunch of people teaching black studies in Leeds. Yeah? And then the next place will be Bristol, if I can pull that one off, which I'm working on. Okay, that's one objective. A second objective is to get the next book out before the slave trade. Then there's going to be a few more writing gigs that I want to do. I want to publish Far East research. And then I want to synthesize mine and his research into an encyclopedia. And then when I've done that, then I'll just cotch.
I live back.
Okay.
Just a quick question. My name is Stephanie. There seemed to be something missing from what you said. Who's going to, apart from yourself, is there a group of people that you're getting together or training up to do the teaching in London?
No, I don't have a course in London yet. Remember January?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've got a course and some people have gone through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll build from those people. Okay. Thank you.
Hand over that to Brooklyn.
No. There's a question. To Brother Robin. Tonight morning. Two questions. One has to do with the parts of the soul. Now you mentioned, you highlighted 7. Some sources, I know some sources give 7. Some sources give 9. You highlighted 7. Didn't include the Shechem and the Ren. Soul and Legacy, George James includes the Shechem and the Ren 9. Is there a reason for this differential? If there is, what is the reason? And could you just illuminate the two missing ones? And the second question is, there's a growing, there's a school of thought which is becoming increasingly vociferous that it is erroneous that we should call ourselves black and we should rather call ourselves brown. Do you have a view on that?
Let me answer the second question first. It's the easiest one. Pure foolishness. Pure foolishness. Yeah, let's get with this idea where black people, we come from one continent. There it is. There's no need for complexity, simplicity. Shechem and Ren. Shechem power, Ren the name. In presenting information, I use Akbar. Because what Akbar's done is he's got 4 of them compared, 4 scholars compared, and then I use James's one, being purely biased in favour of the black man. Now, the 9 theory, the Ren plus the Shechem, my man's probably right. But what it is that that's for future research. In other words, that's not where it's at, that's ahead of where the game's at. Because we're not even agreed on what the 7 actually mean, except that they are divisions of the soul. That makes sense? Now, my view is this. If you take the view, that there's 9, and you're running with 9, it's your history. You say there's 9, there's 9. You get it? Because we all have to take the same power when it comes to our history. In other words, our history, that's what we say it says. That's the interpretation.
Tonight morning. One of the reasons why we tend to be biased in favor of the 9 is because of the 9th one. In particular, because that's the Ren, which has to do with the name. And the ancients say that we have not come alive until a Ren is pronounced in our soul. That's what wakes up the soul. So when you consider the history that we've gone through and the way our African names have been emaciated, to us it's very, very important. That 9th one is very, very important. So that's why we're biased in favor of the 9.
You're getting no disagreement from me.
A view on that?
No disagreement at all. But what I'm trying to get people to is to understand the complexity of the thought, and that compared to modern day psychology, it's blown the psychologists out of the water. And the complexity of the thought is such that our ancestors have already defined in the clearest way possible what mental illness is and how, and what mental health is. Health is all the divisions of the self working as a community of selves. Now that's a heavy concept.
That's right.
And that's the point, But as I said, I have no problem with if people want to see it as 9 or 7, it's all good.
That's right. Brother Robin, when we generally talk about black history, we're talking about classical history generally, and there's a school of thought that our history should include the middle period of history as well. So going back like 300, 400, 500 years, and recent history as well too, because in terms of giving young people, some of them are going to want some kind of role model from the more recent historical heroes as well, what do you thought about that,
please? Objectively speaking, there are exceptions, but the rule is Africa has no modern history. When we say history,
Africans
No, come in. Africa has no modern history. Meaning that if we're defining history as the record and process of people engaged in struggle to shape the world in their interests and images, the last 400 years, Africa has been shaped. And so, if we're looking at the ends of African history, Muna Mutapa, the empire I showed you, ends in 1629, when their king signs a treaty with the Portuguese, allowing them a free hand to enslave. 1663, Ndongo Matamba has no history when Queen Nzinga dies and the slave trade escalates. 1661, Congo has no history, same period. Yeah? 1591, Songhai has no history. It's invaded by the combined Arab, English, Spanish coalition. You follow me? Now, that's Africa. Now you corrected me and said, what about Africans? You then have the rebellions and the maroon communities in the Western Hemisphere, beginning with Palmares in Brazil, the maroon communities in Jamaica, Suriname, the maroon communities in, and then the Haitian Revolution is what is the key one, I agree with that, and that is how I teach the history. That is exactly how I do it. When it comes to, though, the history of young people, you do have a different problem, though. Because what a young person will be impressed by and what an adult will be impressed by is not the same thing. Yeah? So, for example, young people are impressed by, let me give you somebody, like, there's a soul singer called Alia. Yeah? Young people worship that girl, seriously. And I can see why. They see her as a major role model, similarly someone like Tupac. A lot of men, young men, see him as a major role. In other words, they don't see him as a joke business. They don't see Alia as a joke business. And what it means then for us, we have to get with, if it's young people trying to engage them through what they're into. Now, we draw the line. If young people are into 50 Cent, we draw the line. But you can see then that we have to be a bit more pragmatic, because what you're interested in as a big man is not the same as what the youth would be interested in.
It's a part of the whole continuity.
Yeah.
Name is Ron. Thanks, Ron, for coming down. I agree with you in that sense, but I also believe as well that children, because they can't actually visually see the images that you showed us in any kind of mass production, that they don't have nothing to kind of really relate to in history, to say, if they look at something like, for example, the Roman Empire, Colosseums, etc., and then they saw what you showed us right there, then they'll be able to see, now hold on a second, Roman Empire looks like Ethiopia or Kush, etc. in the past. And I think that I kind of said it before, I think the visual representation or visual media will get the youngsters. Because we live in a visual world. Internet's visual, TV's visual, your mobile phone's visual. And that's what they need. For that to cock in, okay, there'll be 50 Cent, there'll be rappers, after rappers there'll be something else, but they visually, I think personally, they need to see representation of what they are told is great things, like King Henry V, etc., and things like that. My opinion.
And also just to add to that same point that Robert was making, that say for example we have Henry VIII taught in schools, I think to have a literal visual time frame in terms of where Henry VIII ranked, and in terms of where the great kings and queens of the ancient cities ranked, and how much more kings and queens there were, what they did. You also mentioned the point where the ancient cities already had irrigations where they drained swamps. I've never actually thought of it like that. And it's very recently, at the very modern end of the scale, where the Romans had sewage, whether they did or didn't, I don't know.
They did.
Right. So, what's highlighted in the schools now are prominence is placed on the European achievements.
Yeah, but here's the point though. If you look at what you just told me, you told me what you're impressed by as a big woman. Don't be thinking that if you told a 14-year-old that, it would click in the same way. It might, but don't assume it will. Because you're impressed by that, and you're right to be impressed by that, but you've got to remember, as a big person, it's not quite the same as dealing with young people. But my view is, we can still produce material that, if Henry VIII is going to be given certain grandeur, make sure our kings are given the same grandeur. The visuals are there because we've got the monuments to do, we've got the artifacts to do.
Yeah. Brother, that's crucial because the visual representation is the thing, you know. Like so our artists, you know, and our animators, people who do animation, you know, video games, them kind of things that can bring those ancient things back, you know, back to relevance. Yeah, you know, definitely we need, you know, people who
and what's more, there's lots of black people who are computer literate. I mean, there's more black people in the computer game than anybody. In other words, and it's about putting the idea to the person who can actually pull it off. Because I'm sure the black community will buy into it, and the person can make money. And even if that's what their motivation is, do it. You know.
Let's give an example because I know there's of somebody who's used the visual art form to get his message across. Asher Crazy, he does a lot of DVDs and everything there, and like, I mean, he came over in May, and enough young people came out just on the strength of bootlegging DVDs kind of thing, and that was visual, so it does, your point is quite valid, it does work.
Hi, I'm Angela. I've got 2 children, and sitting here and listening to you, it's a lot for me to take in and also to pass on to my children. And as this gentleman was saying, like visual things, like holiday tours and like to go to places to actually, for the children to actually see these monuments. I know some of them they're not there, but they are.
No, not the one.
Okay, there you go. So is there like a tour where you can take your children to see these places?
In this country.
No.
In this country, no one's doing it, as far as I'm aware. Whereas in America, they are doing it. They're taking people to various parts of Africa on study tours. Now, what it means is that if somebody has the idea, big hint, you, who wants to make a business out of it, big hint, there's money to be made. Yeah. If you were to coordinate those sorts of tours, you could charge some big bucks and make a living doing it. And it would be picking certain places where there's monuments. And in Africa, the places where there's the most to go and see is Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Mali, and Nigeria.
I've said to my children I'm going to take them to Egypt, but I wouldn't know where to start.
That's the point I'm making.
You know?
But if you had the idea and you could set it up, speak to me. Not people can speak to me. Speak to Ray Bowen, speak to Les Henry. Or people who can tell you this is exactly how you do it. Or bring one of those sorts of people along, and then they can do the speaking part of it. You see the point I'm making? It's not as hard to do as people think. But if you did do it, you'd be the only person in that kingdom doing it. And so everyone would come to you.
It's not like that. I mean, thank you, but it's just, I'm sure there's many.
No, yeah, what you're trying to say is that somebody else's.
No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is I would want the help. Like you said, I will speak to you after, and I will take it from there to see. I'm not saying something will happen, but I will try my best because I am very much interested.
Also, my book, When We Ruled, Chapter 1 is purely on monuments.
I haven't bought that yet, but I'll
Okay, but if people have read Chapter 1, they can vouch, yes? It tells you exactly where the monuments are, how many of there are, what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, if people, and I did get, my publisher got an email from somebody who was travelling through Ethiopia and was using the book as a tourist guide. Yeah, you can do that.
Tenamori. I'm going to say to my sister that, okay, there isn't anybody doing it here now, but if it's something that maybe you want to start, or you can connect to the ones that are taking place in America. You can join the tours, but they're not necessarily just, you have to come from America to join it.
Sorry, can I interject here?
Yeah.
No, it ain't about joining the American tour. It's about setting up some business here, man.
Tenamori, that's fine, but if some people want, what I'm saying is that it's something that you want to do now. I'm to inform people that it's something that you can do.
And get the experience, yeah.
You can do.
It's even to see how it works.
This is it, even to see how it works, get the experience, get the confidence to do it. The fact is that you can join those tools.
But also a valid point that like Brother Robin is making, and it's important that we hear that point, is that there are people here, Africans here, who have the skill, who have that capacity to lead the expertise to lead those tours. If someone wants to organize it, the logistics of that, then you can tap into the expertise that Robin Walker has and various others. That point must also needs to be heard. But I think both are important. But I think the point that Brother Robin is making is
I think with me as well, sitting here is the, I don't know if you call it fear, but it's not having that enough knowledge, you know, and it's just having the knowledge. I mean, I sit here and I wouldn't say I'm clueless, but you have to start from somewhere, and it's a lot to take in, and I want to take it in, but it's having the knowledge to continue and to, you know, to find the right resource and the right people to lead you to where you want to get to.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Can I, sorry, hi, my name's Marie. Can I add to this as a mother bringing up 2 children, okay? 2 teenagers, I've got 2 boys, yeah? On my own. Now, I'm at the point where I'm getting the books, I'm going to talks, I'm thinking, and I'm a bit of a loose cannon at the moment, and I'm really confused. Like, we're all on our different journeys, yeah? Now, I can sit down and I can study for a few years and I can read and understand, but at the moment nothing's really relating to my children, because it is, as you say,
no, it is. And
I'm filtering it down.
Let me tell you why. Your children are seeing that you're taking study seriously.
Yes.
Therefore, they're seeing that there really is information in books, and they're seeing that mummy's taking this thing seriously. It's not a joke thing. And even if they don't follow you, the point being they know it's a serious thing because you're taking it seriously.
I'll smack myself. Yes, they can see that they can see. But I tell you, subtle little things I'm doing, because you can buy the book and you can read and try and understand. But I almost feel like, should I just stop here? And I have been impaired because yes, we ruled, and yes, the little bit I've gained in such a short period of time has empowered me. And I'm going out there, and I'm a bit of this, and I am, my eyes are open, I'm almost challenging people and questioning things that I didn't question
Were you reading before?
Not really, because I'm bringing up my boys.
No, but see, and they would have seen that this is a before.
Yeah, I know, they can see that now. Mummy doesn't watch telly, Mummy's reading.
Right, you see the point I'm making. So even if it doesn't rub off immediately, there's clearly an impact where it will rub off, because they will see that you're a changed person.
And they can see it because I'm buying the bookmark, or my son who's year 6 writing with a fountain pen. Did you know a black man has, you know, invented this fountain pen? I didn't know his name. So they're seeing the changes in their books. They've got conscious things. So they're seeing and they're hearing, and just everything about me has changed.
So, yes.
Not everything,
So
but
what I'm
things
saying
have
is that you shouldn't be hard on yourself because you're doing the right thing. And my view is, even if you don't turn your boys into geniuses overnight, it will still have an impact, because they all see mummy's taking this thing seriously.
Mummy's gone mad.
No, and you have to then put it in comparison with all the other black parents dealing with foolishness. And the kids will be able to see the difference.
Okay, but what about this thing? What I'm saying to you all here, we're all studying, and you can bury yourself, you can read, you can amass all this information, spend 10 years, or you could do. I mean, what I did today, example today, I took my 16-year-old out to a job centre. I haven't been in one of these for years. I said, look, do you want to be here in 2 years' time? Then I went in Tesco's and I asked that manager in there, because I just got really upset. I'm walking around, and since I've been on this journey, I'm walking around, I'm seeing things, and thinking, there's no black brother in here. I'm not even talking about sister. So I'm standing in Ilford in a big Tesco's, and my blood was starting to boil. And I'm thinking, I shop here all the time. And then I had to go and ask for a recruitment manager, and it's a young girl. And I point blank said to her, hello, what's your name? And I said, look, I shop in here, I've got a mortgage, I've got a house. And I said, why is there no black brother? And I thought, am I going mad or something? Because I came out straight and said, why is there not? I've been shopping here for years and I do not see a black man. She couldn't respond to that. And it's because of this and this kind of empowerment, or am I going mad? And do I need to calm down and read my books and amass my information?
This is what will happen. What will happen is that gradually the old you and the new you will fuse. Yeah? And that will happen. So that, don't worry about that. That will happen. Because what needs to happen is that you need to move away from the blood boiling. But that will happen at some point anyway, so that's cool. But what needs to happen as well is don't lose the passion when the blood stops boiling. Because what happens is people can go back to the way they were before. Right. Now, in the meantime, you're having an impact. You're doing what you're supposed to do. because your boys will see you're taking this thing seriously. And there aren't many boys who can say that about their parents.
Yeah, they could see changes, and something else that come out today. My son actually called me, he said to me, he's darker than me, my son, 16. We talked about the job situation. He says, "Mummy, but you're mixed race." Mixed. And I was like, "What?" I said, "I'm black." He said, "No, Mummy." You know, and for the first time I heard something today, which I'll tackle, which he said, "But if I was light-skinned, I would be getting these jobs." And what the woman done in Tesco, she took my name, she said, "Okay, what's your son's name and address? I'll send him an application for him." Sorry. I just thought, you know, and I went and I thought, have I gone a bit mad? Am I taking this too serious? I am challenging people now.
But the bottom line is that follow up on that.
I am, I'm going to. Big Tesco's and, oh.
Yeah. But ultimately, what you can do is see how the information can get you to be personally independent. Yeah, that would be really productive, and then see how many people you can bring with you. That would be even more productive. But the bottom line is, even if you don't do that, it's still good. It's still good.
Can I say on that as well? I think one of the other, that's why I'm talking about fellowship, right? Fellowship where people meet and share ideas so you can pass it on rather than just you in isolation. Right. So like forums like this is good, you know?
Yes, indeed.
To let out
I just think I'm going with the big egg. I just think I'm the worst mum in the world at the moment, some of the things I'm doing. That's through my journey and what I'm experiencing and covering.
Tender, right, we're going to go into the final question there before we get Brother Robin to round up. So I see 2 hands, and I think, unless there's any more, these are going to be the final 2 questions. So, brother, yeah, the back, and then brother here. Yes, you.
So, I'm Brother Collins, member of the Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement. My question is that is there a link from the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization and When We Rule, and if there's so, what is the link?
Destruction of Black Civilization is the first Black history book I ever read. I've subsequently read it, I think 6 times or 5 times. I can't remember. And that book has been one of the 6 or 7 major influences on When We Ruled. But what I did was, Chancellor Williams set a standard, and the idea is you either get with that standard or you don't. So mine was get with that standard. Right, now there's certain things that Chancellor Williams didn't say. His book contains no East Africa at all. There's no East African civilizations anywhere in the book. So I thought that needs to go in. His book doesn't deal with the African origin of the human race. So I thought that needs to go in. He doesn't deal with the Moorish civilization in Spain, nor does he deal with the Carthaginian civilization in North Africa. I thought that needs to go in. And finally, he doesn't deal with a chronological account of the slave trade, what happened, who did it, yeah? So I thought that needs to go in. But, as I said, it's one of the 7 core books that I used in writing When We Ruled.
Greetings, my name is Maliku. I'd just like to ask, landmark work has been done by Ivan van Sertima into the links between Africa and the Western Hemisphere before the so-called Columbus discovery. Could you just go into more of that, because you showed hinted about relationships between certain European kingdoms, the Western Hemisphere, and also the maps as well. Could you just expand on it a little bit more, please?
Right, Van Sertima wrote books like They Came Before Columbus, African Presence in Early America, but the cutting edge book, where he's got it now, is called Early America Revisited. And in that book, he talks about 2 sets of voyages to America. 2 sets. One set happened during the reign of a king called Ramesses III of ancient Egypt, right? And Ramesses III led voyages where, according to the documents, he led a voyage to the far west of the world, to the inverted mountain in the far west of the world. That's Mexico. And when the Africans got there, the Olmecs were kicking in, the Olmec civilization. And because of the African influence among the Olmecs made stone heads of the Africans. That's right. And there are 16 such stone heads. The other bits of evidence that points to the African connection is that the Mesoamerican pyramids are built on the north-south axis, just like the African ones. The ancient Egyptians used the color purple as a royal color, just as the Mayans were going to do. The ancient Egyptians used a censer called a kofun, and the same type of censer the Native Americans used. The ancient Egyptians had a double crown of red and white. The Native Americans, there's an image of one of them wearing a double crown of red and white. So these are the sorts of connections that would substantiate Ramesses III. And then it's from the Ramesses III voyages and subsequent voyages why the ancient Egyptians or Nubians or whoever it was were able to compile the map that Piri Reis used. Yeah, because you know the geodetic center of the map is the Egyptian-Nubian border, which has got Mexico already mapped, South America already mapped. That makes sense? Right, that's one set of voyages. The second set of voyages that Van Sertima talks about is what took place in the year 1310, when Mansa Abubakari II of Mali made a voyage to Panama, which is right next door to Mexico. Van Sertima is basing it on various bits of evidence. There's an Arab text that describes this, written by a guy called Ibn Fadl el-Umari, and the Arab text was written in the year 1342, which has got this information in. Yeah? Second bit of evidence is that 2 African skeletons were found on the coast of Danish Virgin Islands in a context that would make it contemporaneous with the Malian voyage. Yeah? Then we've got the fact that when Europeans mapped Mexico and Panama, it seems that the Malians renamed everything. So there's a Mandinga Bay in Mexico. There's a Mandinga Point in Mexico. You follow me? In other words, they just gave everything. There's even something called Mount Mali in Mexico. They just renamed everything. Evidence that they got there. Subsequent evidence also shows that the Malians, being Muslims, even persuaded the Native Americans to give up pork. That's documented. Yeah. Now, not all Native Americans, the ones living in the Panama region, got them to buy pork. Yeah. Right. That's what Van Sertima's got. Now, what I've got is one more voyage that Van Sertima doesn't have, and that is the time of Oni Olowo of Ile Ife. Yeah. Now, the evidence that the voyage was made is the pavements, the CMAs, which is buried underneath the Yoruba pavements. Yeah. Now, Van Sertima is aware of the information, but he doesn't put it together to make a case the way that I've done it. So that's the third African voyage.
Yes, right. So it's been a serious evening of African history and a journey of when we ruled and listen to how we're going to rule again. So I'm just going to give you an opportunity to thank Brother Robin for coming again. Any final words to the gathering strong here? Anything you want to close before going to our formal close?
Only to say thanks for coming out. Hope you enjoyed it. And most important thing is get with your history. Yeah. Because without your history, you're nowhere. Yeah. Get with it. Keep supporting what the Alkebu-Lan posse is doing. You know. So yeah, big up to everybody.
Right, what we're doing is going to a formal close. So to do that, we're going to have Brother Leader give us some closing comments to contextualize what you've heard this evening and send it off into the evening, ready and energized to do something with this information that Brother Robin given us. So you can hail him, brothers.
Tatenda. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Tenda Imwari.
Tenda Imwari.
Giving thanks and praises as always unto the Most High, the God of Africa, Mwarinya and Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. We give thanks and praises unto them for our precious breath, for life, for the meaning and purpose of life, for health and strength and daily food. We give thanks and praises unto the creator of the universe and Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. We say for all mercies great and small, and amongst those mercies we are thankful for the blessing of being gathered here in the Hall of Faith and the Hall of Learning, so we can continue as a people, as a family, as a community, to fine-tune ourselves in mind, body and spirit, and make ourselves worthy of being called the children of the Most High, the sons and daughters of Africa, the descendants of those great intellectual and cultural giants that we just heard about, our ancestors. And also to call ourselves freedom fighters, those who are called forth in the present time to inspire the rest of us, to organize and stand up and fight back for the total liberation of our land and people, the glory of Mwari, God, and Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors, and the attainment of a higher quality of human existence. Tendai Mwari. Brothers and sisters, we've been blessed this evening with so much rich knowledge of our great and glorious history by one of the most erudite scholars that we have on the planet, and we do not, and illustrious, and we do not, brothers and sisters, exaggerate is the word I'm looking for. You know, it's a terrible thing when you speak in an alien language. You have to feel for words, you know what I'm saying, brothers and sisters. But we've been fortunate this evening to have this man. He's always inspired me. It's something not just about the information, but about his depth, his style, and the love that exudes from him for his people and for what he does, the enthusiasm. I've never seen him speak and there is not that enthusiasm ringing out of this great man that is in our present. And in our movement we have this good habit of bigging up those among us who are alive, who are present, who are close enough for us to touch them and heal them, give them the due. Because we tend to like our heroes and our great ones and sheroes, we like them dead and distant. We don't seem to recognize them until they're gone. So I don't want us to wait until 50 years time when Brother Robin decided to give up the ghost and we say, oh, it was a great man. You know what I'm saying? I want us to do that now. And whilst the children are with us, the children can, while he is with us. We're not giving him 50 more years, no? 50, at least. Okay, at 50. Least. Whilst the children, we have our children among us, we can point them to that great man as a source of inspiration for them. Tendai Mwari, can we hear them again, brother? Really is an honor to have you grace our spiritual home this evening. Normally we have a picture of Papa Garvey we had to remove for the screening, but we now have a picture of Papa Garvey above there. So to have you standing under that great and mighty ancestor is just an honor for us. Let me move quickly, brothers and sisters. You know, this is what we call Black History Month. We want to rename that African Heritage Month. That'll take a little time for our people to get our heads and our tongues around that. But we must remember the great historian, the great professor who pronounced what was then called Negro History Week, what we call Black History Month today. A man called Carter G. Woodson. Can we hear him, brothers and sisters? And he says to us that philosophers have long since held that there are two types of education. Come on now. One that a people are given, the other that a people give themselves. That's right. And of the two, The one that is most important or more important is by far, he says, the education that we give ourselves.
That's right.
No oppressor has ever educated the people they oppress for the sake of their liberation. And I think that's the core of the message that our brother has delivered to us this evening. And I don't know whether we heard what he had to say to us. In essence, I'm not dealing with form here, brothers and sisters. All the slides, that was nice, it was good to see, and it's interesting, it's exciting. But did we hear the essence of the message? He says that we have to, and I can't remember the exact words that he used, but basically we have to liberate every single aspect of African being. Culturally, educationally, our history has to be liberated. Our psychology has to be liberated. Our sociology has to be liberated. Our science has to be liberated. The concept of family has to be liberated. Everything, though, even brothers and sisters, I was writing a letter to the chair of governors of a school, John Napper School, right now that the local authority is trying to take over. And I wrote a strong letter to the director of education. And I got a letter back from a brother who is a chair of governors of the school, really berating me for writing a strong letter to this Bakra director. Yeah, taking issue with me. He's the chair of governors answering on her behalf. You understand that mentality we're talking about? These people trying to take over a school that's run, albeit a Christian school, it's run by African people. And we're trying to support the school. And he is writing on her behalf in this day and age. She hasn't even acknowledged receipt of my letter. I didn't jump in front of her. Jump in. And so I'll take it. You understand what I'm saying, brothers and sisters? And calling me a racist. This African calling me, you know, we're sick. You understand what I'm saying? We are a sick people. And there's work, there's serious work for us to do on ourselves. Very, very serious work that we have to do on ourselves to lift ourselves out of the mess and the mire that we find ourselves in. And it will happen, brothers and sisters, not through purely through emotional expressions or, you know, disburdening ourselves emotionally. We have to do some work. We have to do some building. Sis was asking a question relating to your children. We need to get the children organized. We need to get academies or schools organized and programs organized for the children. The studying that we're doing, as Brother Robin says, is very important. But we also have to have a mechanism for socializing and educating our children at their level. Then we need also within that context to bring the children together to share their lives with each other. Because when they go to school, even many of the African children are not on the level that they and their families are on. You understand what I'm saying, brothers and sisters? So we have what we call the Alkebu-Lan Academy of Excellence that happens right here, between here and the church around the corner. Sister clapping because her two sons are in the academy, sister's daughter is in the academy, and they're doing well. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? That's their space, that's their time, and everything is broken down to their level. And we're teaching them maths, and we're teaching them something called language and communication, not just English, but language and communication we're teaching them. We're teaching them African world studies. We're teaching them tree and African language. We're teaching them performing arts. We're teaching them art and craft, all from an African-centered perspective. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? So they come into a loving, caring environment. They have half an hour of assembly, 9:30 to 10 o'clock, where we engage them in a process of reaffirming, you know, who they are. Yeah? Who wears the crown? If you say to them, who wears the crown? They tell you, I wear the crown. Yeah, and we reinforce it. Who wears the crown? I wear the crown. And we want it strong. Yeah, if it's not strong, we say, come on, we want it loud and proud. Who wears a crown? I wear. What kind of crown is it? A crown of African glory. Every Saturday morning they go through it over and over again. What kind of crown is it? A crown of African glory. What's our mission? Nation building. What's our mission? Nation building. And to build a nation, we need what? Discipline. We need what? Discipline. And we want to move from nation to great nation. What do we need? Geniuses. What do we need? Geniuses. I want all the geniuses to raise them hand. You see the African tree raise them. I want simple things. Because we know they are attacking our children's mind, body, and soul. They dress our sisters up or down on the box, put them in front of, and they beat them home in. Yeah, on breasts and pelvic, and have them winding up themselves and have our children in front of that, brothers and sisters. It's a scientific process of programming that they're taking our children through. Yeah, it's not accidental. It's not just entertainment. It is designed, brothers and sisters, to destroy our nation, to make sure that we can never stand up and build a proud nation again. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Simple things that we must do. We ain't gonna build no pyramids if we can't own a little space like this.
That's true.
Yeah?
That's true.
And run a little. We're not going to run the nation.
That's right.
If we can't run an organization, if we can't run a little shop,
that's right.
We ain't going to run no nation again. You understand what I'm saying, brothers and sisters? So we have to practicalize that which inspires us when we come to meetings like this. When we leave, we must be buzzing around how can we transform this into practical reality. And that's what we're trying to do here. So we are very, very proud to have you in our spiritual home. This is our headquarters. This is our spiritual home. But this is just this is an embryo. This is the embryonic stage of the vision that we really have. But we can't fulfill that vision without the community throwing its weight behind this movement. So, brothers and sisters, I want to invite you to find out more about the Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement. Take one of our booklets, have a little read. We have our recruitment program that starts in April. I know that seems a long way. We have people on the list already. They say, oh, it's so far away, right? But by the time you spin around, it'll be April, brothers and sisters, right? Come on, our induction program is a 7-week program. It's a 7-week program and it is a 4-week program. After that, you can decide whether you want to join the movement or not, or whether you want to look around the community and see what else is going on there. But we encourage our people to join organizations. Join an organization, brothers and sisters. Start thinking in terms of being members of an organization and working for the liberation of your people. Develop an ethos of duty and work for the liberation of our people. Yeah? Let us not be selfish with our time. My time is mine. No, your time belongs to your people. Your time should be invested in planning for your children's future. And if our ancestors say it takes a village to raise a child, what does it require to map out the future of generations unborn? It takes generations to do that, but we have to start somewhere. And the best place to start, our ancestors say, to count sand, we start from where we stand, right here, with the first grain, the first of 1,000,000, the first of 1,000,000,000, but we're going to count them one by one. But we have to start somewhere. It's here and now. And we are here, and this is now. This is the time. This is the moment. We have claimed this space, and we must also command the time. This is our time. Being here this evening, we are commanding time and space. We have defined time and space coming here. We could be at home. Some of our people at home in front of TV. Yeah? Doing what Bacchus say you must do on a Friday evening. Sit down, put your feet up and drink some liquor. Right? We have redefined time and space this evening. And we said this is where we must be.
That's right.
Yeah? Focusing in on knowledge that is going to liberate us. Inspiring our children as they sit before us and hear a great man like this. Are you with me? Their life will never be the same after hearing a man like this. When we come and define time and space, that we will determine circumstances. That's how you determine circumstances. You have to define time and space. We have to reclaim. When we rule, if we're ever going to be ruling again, we have to rule in the little corner where we have, little space where we have. You can't make the oppressor rule your home through the TV, through the radio, through the record industry. No, you have to rule. You have to know you are king and queen in your little talk two down. Me run this. You can't run that, you ain't run no nation.
Right.
Yeah? So run this. Yeah? Know that this building that we call Alkebu-Lan headquarters belong to all of you sitting here.
Yeah.
This is, you have to say to yourself, this is my spiritual home.
That's right.
You need to say that to yourself. This is my spiritual home. And I'm coming here, not just to hear a lecture. I don't even like that word.
Message.
But I'm coming here to hear a message with my brothers and sisters. Get to know each other. Embrace or shake hands with a brother or sister after we finish in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Shake hands, embrace, exchange telephone numbers, because we're going to build a family, a communion of family towards building an African nation. Only then, brothers and sisters, will we ever be able to respond to the command of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Rise, you mighty, mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters.
Tenda Mwari, thank you for watching this video. We do hope you found it edifying and purposeful. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit us at our website, alkebulan.org. Tenda Mwari.